It's time to look at the 2022 NFL AFC West. We're going division by division, schedule analysis, and initial opinions and comments. Here with Ron, I'm going to throw it to you. Denver. We're going to start with Denver here. Obviously, they have the whole new coaching staff. I think that's probably a good thing for them. They've got this new quarterback, Russell Wilson. I think that's an upgrade from Locke. I don't know what your feelings are on that. They play a fourth place schedule, and well, that's about it there. I think those are just the things off the top of my head. But I think the team has high expectations and may not meet the high expectations that they have. Quite frankly, they seem to be somewhat a little bit all in, but I think Russell Wilson's going to help them out. I mean, anything's going to help that offense. They fought the injuries. Their best receiver missed half the season, if I'm not mistaken. I think some key offensive linemen. They were riddled with injuries on defense. They started off 3-0 last year and went downhill from there. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I still don't think that they're going to be as good enough to win that division. I think they'll be good enough to make the playoffs. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Chris, here we go with the toughest division in football. It was probably the toughest division at the end of last year. And as you know, through free agency and so on, through blockbuster trades, this division, every team tried to one-up each other. So we go in thinking not all four of these teams can make the playoffs in 2022, and there are high expectations starting with Denver. So my analysis started before free agency, going through step by step. We were looking at a 7-10 team last year, but they outscored their opponents by 13 points. By Pythagorean theorem principles, this was far closer to a 50-50 team with what I think it was a failed coach. Somebody who didn't get the job done in crunch time, didn't elevate the offense. So what did they do in free agency? Well, the first thing they did is they brought in an offensive coach, Nathaniel Hackett. Second thing they did is, after finishing pretty much middle of the pack year after year, never being able to get a top tier wide receiver, they said, what the hell, let's go trade for one. And so they paid a king's ransom for Russell Wilson, but that already elevates expectation levels and the offense. He's going to be playing behind one of the better offensive lines, the best he's ever played behind. Then you got the draft, and the draft did nothing for me. They went sideways in the draft. So let's just forget about the draft for right now. So now we look at the schedule, and here's a Denver team, 7-10 last year, but because they added Russell Wilson, what did the NFL schedule makers do? Put them on prime time 4 of the first 6 weeks of the season. And Chris, take a look at their closing stretch.
Oh, it's awful.
Last 6 games at Baltimore, who we both said, and we both put our money where our mouth is improved. They play Kansas City twice. They play Arizona, at the Rams, home to the Chargers. By far the toughest schedule in all of football last 6 weeks of the season. And now we've got season win totals. I see it down below at 10, a team that hasn't sniffed 10 in the last few years. They're clearly better. But are these expectations just too high?
I think they are. I mean, there's certainly no way I'm looking to go over. I think 9 or 10 wins is I think 9 wins is probably a solid. If I had to play it, I would definitely go under. There's just no way I can bank on them hitting 11, and you get the safety net of pushing on the 10. So even looking at an alternate line under might be worthwhile if you're getting the right price. And I'll remind people each half win is worth about 45 to 48 cents. So factor that in when you're looking at the various lines, because you can find all kinds of alternate lines here. But I agree. You got to be optimistic that they're going to do better, but better, I think 10 wins is a little bit too optimistic.
So what I want to do with this before I ask you a Kansas City question is, how do we attack this from a strategic point of view? I agree with you. The only thing I'm looking at would be under. There's a rogue 10.5 out there. You have to pay the juice, but you're talking about alternate lines. I'm going to let it play out for a little bit because I know the optimism is going to be there. I don't see them as a public play on or play against team right now. I'm going to suggest an angle. Under Vic Fangio, they were known for their defense. Their points scored, points against, very low. One of the teams that you could count on being old school. It's going up, just like you pointed. I think before the odds makers adjust, we should look at game totals in September, maybe early October, because this is going to be a more innovative offensive staff. And of course, they have Russell Wilson. They don't have Drew Lock anymore. That would be the way that I would attack this. Any other thoughts on Denver at this point?
Yeah, I wish I wasn't blind so I could see what the first week total is. Oh, wow. Are you kidding me? Do you know what the first week total is with Seattle?
Denver, Seattle, as a guess, 46-47.
That's what I would have guessed. You're not going to believe this.
Okay.
Oh, well, we're going to take this. We're going to hit this line before the show airs so we can talk about it. Would you believe 43?
Okay, well, there'll be a break in the action. We're going to take a commercial break now. And that's the start of it. And then after that, they play Houston, the 49ers, the Raiders. This could get interesting.
But Ron, I was lying. It's not 43. It's 41.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Can you believe that? I'm going to be hitting that one. I'm going to be hitting
Okay. Okay. Let me make a big fat note. And I have a question for you because part of what we're doing is putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So Denver by itself is one thing. What about with the rest of the AFC West? Chris, how much does the subtraction of two players influence you with regards to Kansas City? Tyrann Mathieu and Tyreek Hill. Two players, two highly productive, instinctive players. How does it change your perception of KC before we look at what's gone on in the offseason?
Well, I was down on Kansas City when that, and coming out of last season, it looked like that they were going to take a dip for a year, but they did the smart thing. We talked about this. They got rid of their salary cap issues with Hill. I think that was a great move. And there might have been some friction there because Hill's talking about how Tua, gets the ball to him much better than Mahomes did. So it might not have just been salary cap. Maybe there was some hidden friction. Maybe they didn't get along. So we don't know for sure. But they did a pretty darn good job in the draft. Am I not mistaken?
They did an excellent job in the draft. By far, in my opinion, the best job from this division. Their focus was exceptional. They got probably 5 to 6 future starters out of this draft.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing it. And we look back at last year where they started off poorly. They ended up looking horrible in the beginning because they were integrating all these new offensive line people. Yeah. They hit their bye. They hit half the season, and they did very well afterward. And they've got a great offensive line. And adding these guys in the fold is going to take, a handful of games. They've got that brutal first 7 games are just abysmal. But with that kind of coaching and with the veterans that they still have and the experience that they have and the expectations that are realistic, they're going to be able to manage a schedule like that much better than probably all but 3 or 4 other teams in the NFL could. So, success is 4-3 in the first 7 games. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree completely. And, we keep hammering the point, and I think it's worthwhile to say that the offensive line is in a completely different place starting this September than last September. Now, we could see a repeat with that brutal schedule of, like you said, 4-3. But if they're 4-3 at that point, they may go over that season win total at the end.
Just to address it, they start off with Murray, Herbert, Ryan, Brady, Carr, Allen, and probably Garoppolo.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough start for them. They still have some pieces that they have to put together defensively to make this work. Their run defense, they're going to have to sacrifice that to defend those quarterbacks. But what I like and what you hinted at there is staff stability. I mean, Kansas City has an offensive coordinator that keeps getting passed over for head coaching jobs. So Andy Reid is happy to have Eric Bieniemy back. Their defense, their coordinator returns. So you've got a lot of things going for them. It is a tough schedule overall. It's the toughest in this division. But if there's a team that can handle it and a team that got deeper in the offseason with the exception of these two superstars, it's Kansas City. Now, so what's my approach to them going into the year? I don't have an approach to them. I don't have, basically, you can't have an opinion on all 32 teams. You don't need to have an opinion on all 32 teams. And I'm laying it flat right now. We've got a 10.5 season win total slanted to the over. You'll see some offshore shops and maybe some local shops in Vegas that are going to look at 11. And I think that's too tight. I don't have an opinion at this time. What about you, Chris?
No, I'm, and we were bantering back and forth on Twitter today how important it is. You've got to be twofold. You've got to be able to expect anything to happen. So you have to be open-minded that any team can do anything. But by the same token, you have to be willing to repivot, so to speak, on your opinions, if you have any opinions. And as you inferred, I'm going to be kind of, neutral on any expectations with Kansas City. They're going to be a tough team week in week because, they're not going to be up those first 7 games. They're not going to be down those 7 games. You're going to have to play around with the ups and downs that start off next season. So you just got to sit and watch with this team. I agree with you.
2 things that are going to be on my team sheets that maybe viewers and listeners may want to hone in on. One is, what kind of pressure are they going to put on opposing quarterbacks? This is not a uniquely great sacking team. And if they don't get to the quarterback, some of these really good quarterbacks that they face are going to take advantage of that. And then the second thing I'm going to be looking at is, what does that wide receiver room look like now that they've lost Hill, and I think they lost somebody else in there as well? So how does that play out? How does Mahomes make them look better? Those are the 2 things that are really on my radar screen in August and in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
And, you always have to play psychologist a little bit. And I like the motivation factor here of them getting shut out again. And I think we're going to see a different Mahomes. I honestly do, just because he's got different challenges. He's going to be different. The scheme is going to be different coming into this season. And I think he's going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And we saw cracks in the armor with Mahomes last season. He had some bad games. He made some crucial mistakes. And I think he can recover from it. But what happens if he doesn't? What happens if this guy just had a monster start of a career and just kind of, edges slowly away from those performances? I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying it's possible.
I think he tried to do too much early in the season, and he didn't have the offensive line to take advantage of it. There will be times that he'll try to do too much to try to prove that he's going to be just as successful without Tyreek Hill and so on and so forth. But there's just, the team is deeper than it has been in the last 3-4 years, believe it or not, even though they're always contending for the title. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but let's see what happens.
That drives us into a team with a lot of challenges here. I think out of these 4 teams, the Chargers have the most pressure on them. Wouldn't you agree?
The Chargers' expectations are playoffs or bust. In some cases, I think expectations are divisional title or bust. Yeah. And let's be realistic. We've talked about this. 7 of the last 8 years, they have a playoff-worthy team, and yet they haven't been in the playoffs. Part of that is coaching, and I'm not harping on Staley because he's only been there 1 year. I'm talking about previous coaches that weren't good. And we know a large chunk had to do with special teams. So, Chris, what have they done that makes us believe that this year is going to be different from the past?
Well, they had a few pickups. We talked about their special needs. The special challenges that they've had that has cost them double-digit games over the 6-7 years that you've been tracking it. The special teams has actually cost them that many games. So we're going to see an improvement. It can't get any worse. They got a little bit better last year, correct?
A little bit better, but really they've been at a keel. They've been at a 10-win keel for most of the last 6-7 years, and they haven't delivered.
I just think that this team should be able to settle in. And if there's any chaos or any unexpected problems, then it might start to cause some serious problems in my eyes. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that because I believe that this team should be, even with the high expectations, they've got everything they need to be a playoff team for sure. They have everything to compete to at least compete at the highest levels. I believe that coaching and just a little this and a little carelessness here and there is not going to take them to the promised land. But I firmly believe that they should be in the playoffs with 1 or 2 victories. I don't know how you can have a lower expectation with the talent that they have. What do you think?
Well, let's move into this a little bit. They add a piece with Khalil Mack. They're trying to actually improve their sack totals. Now I know Mack may be on the.
Do you think Mack still? I think Mack is on the severe downturn.
Well, here's his opportunity to free up a blocker so that Bosa gets double-digit sacks. It's not just Mack, but it's what he brings to the other people. Where maybe if you put a lesser offensive lineman on Mack, he's going to get through. So you put somebody on Mack, you neutralize him one-on-one, and then all of a sudden Bosa faces a little bit less challenge. So I think looking at it, the big picture, this is a critical area for the Chargers to finally put more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. It's not something they've done well. So the other thing I like,
but just to address those 2 players, if I gave you plus 150 that between the 2 of them they play 22 games, would you take it?
Plus 150, I would take it because it's plus.
You think they'll play 22 games between them?
22 out of 34? Yeah, I'd go for it plus 150. I think it's plus EV.
Okay. They're both injured every year.
Well, I'll put a memo out to the Chargers and say rest them almost every 3rd game for me, and go from there.
Sorry.
I'll put in some feelers there. I want to talk about immediate potential revenge, the strongest kind, because they open up against the team that they played 70 minutes against, the Raiders, and were out of the playoffs. I mean, right away, we talked about playoff revenge in past shows and how it doesn't matter if it's the second half of the year. It doesn't matter if it's a Sunday afternoon, week 7 game after a tough, revenge game beforehand or a Monday nighter. But this one is going to be on their radar screen from the moment that game ended to the moment the schedule was announced. This is a huge opportunity for the Chargers in game 1 against Vegas, who they know they're better than. And then game 2, they play Kansas City. Right off the bat, the Chargers have a chance to make a statement.
Yeah.
Now you look at the total, 10.5. Again, I'm not one who jumps to play over-unders. Not jumps to play overs, I should say. I do jump to play unders. And because I think this Chargers team is talented, they have a new special teams coach. So we could all, pray a little bit and say, hey, maybe this year is the year they finish 24th instead of 31st. And even that would get them in the playoffs. But I'm not going to jump on the season win total over. We've talked about the AFC is tougher. Instead, I'm going to focus on something that might be interesting to you and to everybody who's watching this. This is not a great home team. We know that they haven't. Sometimes we see more fan support for the visiting team than the home team.
For sure.
But this is a good road team, and this is a better team this year than last year. My initial focus, the notes I'm going to make, is find a way to back the Chargers when they're on the road. Simple as that.
Yeah, but I think we found a way to do that last year. No, but I like that look for sure, obviously. But I think that they're going to, you know what, Charger fans are really passionate, and they come out of the woodwork, so they're like cockroaches. I don't understand why they don't have the fans in the stadium. I don't understand the dynamics of the location and such, but they've got a lot of loyal fans. So I would think that we're going to see an uptick in attendance that's going to help them out this year.
See, this is kind of a flip because last year I think I went in saying fade them in home games, and this time I'm saying back them in road games. So it's just kind of a flip of the philosophy, because I think Staley will be better year 2. Special teams might be better. Their ability to rush the quarterback might, hopefully will be better. The schedule permits that early revenge. So I'm not going to, I think home field advantage, for whatever we think it's worth, it's been downgraded. We know it's a point and a half, 2 points. In the Chargers case, I don't even know if it's worth a point and a half. So I'd rather take that point and a half on the road and go with it.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll address this in later NFL content that we have. But just a reminder, the road teams have been performing very well in the NFL and the cat is out of the bag on that. I mean, I've known this for years, and I was getting a great advantage because everybody was valuing home teams at 3 points. And it's just not that way anymore. You've got to remember, these road teams travel in style. They get away from home, the family dynamics and the problems, the kids screaming. They get to hang out with their girlfriends, and, they're happy. So just something to keep in mind. And speaking of being on the road and being happy with your girlfriend, we're going to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And this team, this is an enigma. It's absolutely fascinating that this team made the playoffs last year. It just seemed like stuff fell into their lap. They obviously faded. They had the 4 overtime victories that they were fortunate enough to get. They had other variance type issues that went their direction. They had the huge challenges of losing their 2 players during the regular season, one, in that tragedy, but they overcame that. They lost their coach, for God's sakes. I mean, everybody wrote them off for dead. They had no expectations. Now this year, they've spent a lot of money, and they're kind of chirping a little bit. I think that's not a good sign for them. I don't know how to even read this team. They just seem to overperform their expectations so much last year that they got to show me again. I'm going to go off of in-season metrics and leave it at that. I want nothing to do with predicting what this team does.
It's been a roller coaster ride for me with this team. And I'd have to say right now, this is the last team we're going to do in the AFC, but the most fascinating team that we're doing in the AFC, partly because of what happened in the division with their rivals picking up quarterbacks, picking up draft choices, and so on and so forth, and partly because of their own drama. So we end the season with the Raiders having enormous chemistry. They got away from the ups and downs of Gruden. They really navigated, and they were a fun team to watch as they went through. The last game against the Chargers took so much out of them. We felt they weren't going to go far in the playoffs based on that. They just got in. Yeah. So we start the year before free agency, and it's a downer for me because you look at them, 10-7, outscored by 65 points. By all metrics, they're really not even an 8-9 team last year. So I start them saying that their foundation before free agency was 7.5. Then they go out and get wide receiver Adams. Now, you have to count him as part of the draft grade because he cost them a lot of draft capital. But he's arguably one of the top 2 or 3 best receivers in the league. So they're instantly upgraded roster-wise. They added a number of pieces. You just said that they overspent a little, or they spent a lot of money in free agency, and they did that relatively wisely. So now we're getting a little bullish on them. Then the draft comes and it was dismal. It was really dismal. They drafted running backs and it didn't matter. They drafted 2 offensive linemen, which I applaud, maybe not the best ones, but it was a need. And then they drafted 2 defensive tackles, arguably their strongest position on defense, and they drafted 2 more of those. So they're woefully thin in a number of different areas. They have another new coach, another new staff coming in, and they have a pretty bad schedule. So now I'm starting to feel bad after the draft. And now I feel even worse because I don't like their first 5 games. I don't like the fact they go on the road for the next 5 weeks after that. I don't like the fact that they're playing 3 straight primetime games for Josh McDaniels, who I have no idea how to evaluate as a head coach, but I think he deserves the opportunity. And even though they're home the last 2 weeks, maybe with a shot at making the playoffs against improved Denver, improved the Chargers, and the stable Kansas City, the last 2 games
Indy.
are...
They got to go to Indy, too.
Yeah, and they have to play at the end, San Francisco and Kansas City. And believe me, those teams aren't going to be intimidated by going to Vegas to play at the end of the year. Their season win total is 8.5. I ebbed and flowed all the way through, but I do have an opinion on this team. I just don't see them winning 9 games.
I don't see how they do it either. And, and they weren't very good at home last year. They were only 5-4 for a playoff team. It's that seems pretty weak. But it also tells you that they did okay on the road. And I remember backing them a handful of times. And I remember getting burnt by them too, when they covered against Pittsburgh in week 2. So Vegas always seems, the Raiders always seem dangerous on the road. They seem to adapt to that East Coast road trip better than other teams. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but doesn't it seem like they seem to do okay? I mean, I remember the previous year they had the nightmare game with Cleveland that they ended up squeaking out, and they just find a way to win these road games unexpectedly.
I think they're a good road team, relatively speaking, and I don't think there's any game on their schedule they can't win because they have the pieces at pass rusher. They have the pieces at wide receiver now with Adams. They have a quarterback who's very comfortable on and off the field to be a leader now. They have a run game for whatever that's worth, but that's not necessarily worth a lot. But there's still too many questions for me, and too many teams got better in the offseason. And basically the Raiders added Adams, and I'm not sure some of their strengths got better, but their weaknesses did not get better. And 4 teams just can't make the playoffs out of the AFC West.
No, for sure. 2 things though. Do they still have the running back that was making 12, 13 million on the roster? Is he still there? Is he still that much of a cap hit for him?
No, I think their leading rusher is a rookie. I mean, he was a rookie. I mean, he's a 3rd-year player, so he's on a rookie contract. That's not a big thing. I don't think they have a cap hit at running back.
Last year, they were paying a running back $11 or $12 million. I mean, it was just absurd. I don't remember the further details, but that stuck out to me. The one thing that I just don't like, I don't like how Adams is out there mouthing off that Carr is as good as Rodgers. I just don't. It just rubs me the wrong way. It kind of tells me I don't like the place that they're in with their thought process to be doing that.
I think they're going to be a strong offensive team because McDaniels just brings creativity to the table. At least he did with New England. And Carr brings tremendous amount of experience. The offensive line leaves something to be desired. It's not, I would call it probably a C- offensive line. Others may disagree with me, but there's no true superstar on that. What is it? Colton, that's the left tackle. I can name 15 to 20 better left tackles in the NFL.
We haven't been doing this. It was my fault, so punish me. But the circa divisional odds, is there any wager there that you would even consider taking with the Chiefs plus 190, the Chargers plus 215, the Broncos plus 265, or the Raiders plus 620?
if I narrow it down to two teams in a division like Indy and Tennessee or Buffalo and New England or something, then I start getting excited. But here, even with Denver in the mix, there's three teams I would have to consider for the divisional title if Russell Wilson really elevates Denver. So for me, I don't see enough value. I could see where the Chargers could be the slight favorite if all works out. But again, back to coaching stability with Kansas City. I don't see a number that's valued enough for me.
No, I looked at that and I just kind of laughed at it and wondered, well, who would bet those? Explain where you're going to find the value. I literally don't see anything close to value there.
I mean, think that we got Baltimore at plus 230, plus 240. I think you mentioned plus 250 in a division that's not nearly as strong as this one.
Exactly. I mean, it's just there's just no value. I'd like to remind everybody that Ron has an excellent NFC and AFC schedule analysis by team, and it's a lengthy paragraph on each team that takes a look at a bunch of the scheduling quirks and things to look out for. It can be downloaded for free at the scrolling address on the bottom of the screen. I think that about does it for us, right? We're done with the AFC. Good riddance. We'll see you in a month or two, right?
On to the NFC. A lot of challenges there. Not as strong, but if you're talking about playoff contenders, that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun when we go through each team and say, well, wait a second, maybe they're not going to make it. Maybe they are. A lot of changes in that division too. A lot of fun to go through this and hone in on things that we think could be valuable edges to be had.
Well, when you've got the NFL Network showcasing matchups like Atlanta and Detroit to start off preseason, you've got a quality conference you can look forward to.
Can't wait to deep dive into that one.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Don't like us or subscribe, and don't tell anybody about us. And we appreciate everybody joining us. And we'll be back with NFC content before you know it, hopefully.